Okay, hi everybody, it's me, Hugh. It's Liquid Lunch, maybe the first Liquid Lunch of the new year. And we're going to start it off with a panel. We're going to be talking about AI and a bunch of other things. We've got Shai Az joining us, who's the author of this book. And she's a marketing expert. And so this is all going to be within a marketing context today too. And she's got a new marketing program for small and medium-sized businesses that she's going to announce. We've also got Denis Serebryakov here, who's a security and privacy and blockchain enthusiast and expert. And of course, we work with them here at that channel. And Gerald Cupchik, who is a professor of psychology at the University of Toronto. And it's good to have you back, Gerald.
I hope to encourage privacy.
Okay, good. Good luck. Yeah. So Shai, I mean, where do you want to start? I know you've got this new marketing program.
Yes, I do.
You've got the book, so what do you want to tell us about it?
I'm excited and ready to go for 2020. And I think that digital dynamics is changing. So we're moving from very big business, very corporate, very bureaucratic systems into now community-based like we're doing now, and using our own digital platforms to promote our own businesses and growth. So I see for 2020, and this is where I'm very excited about small and big business, is to collaborate, interact with one another, build ethical brands, and basically change the dynamics to more community like we did in the past. It was word of mouth, but we're using word of mouth on digital to promote each other, to engage and create brands, authenticity, innovation, and products that we care about. So I'm seeing a big shift in the dynamics from huge consulting and the bureaucratic sort of big budget to more interaction, one-on-one, and ideas coming up from communities like we're going to do today. So I'm very excited, and I'm launching a program to help other businesses strategize and use digital tools to grow themselves and basically get in the game.
So it's really internet-enabled word of mouth. Really, that's what social media
it's just
is,
media.
right?
Yes.
But tools like the tool that your marketing program,
Exactly.
really put small businesses on an equal playing field with much larger players, right?
Yes, because now they can leverage a whole different set of tools that they have available to them, whether it's social media marketing or email or websites. It's really about competitively promoting yourself online.
Okay.
Yes.
Do you want to give a link right now for people that are interested in maybe following up with you on the marketing program?
Sure. So if you Google @ShaiAz, you'll get all my social media, my website, and on my website is an application to get my 6-month training program, which will be a lot of strategy and concepts on digital principles.
Okay, fantastic. And they can get the book out there as well, right?
Yes.
Great. Is there anything else you want to say about your program before we move on to the general AI discussion?
Oh, yes, I do. So what I like to focus on with going forwards now is for businesses to learn how to strategize and compete with a lot of other businesses out there. So my program to start with is going to give you core concepts of how businesses can compete and innovate, and especially build interaction and one-on-one engagement. So it doesn't have to be the big mass marketing. I'd like to see more authentic relationships with digital,
Okay.
as an example of what we're doing right now.
Okay, great.
Yes.
Can I throw something in?
Yes, please, Gerald.
So what's interesting is my friend John Younger, who was at U of T years ago, and is retired, lives in New York, and he writes for Forbes about people like yourself. Because there's an important concept here. It's a concept of new kinds of working communities. So rather than being embraced in a particular company where you're doing your one piece in the cog of the large enterprise,
Yes.
you're working yourself, but there are many other people like you who represent a different kind of community, an online digital community, who are not just sharing their own ideas, but are actually in a position to work together to in a sense, create a digital community of mutual support, where the outreach is not just to the individual who needs to learn or can benefit from learning your technique, but share among themselves ideas about how to do their goals and your goals together. So it's a different kind of community. It's a community of independent people working from home together to create certain goals, and in your case, help people understand aspects of economy, but share it with them at the same time.
Exactly, and I think that if you have a niche, for example, my experience is 10 years in corporate, So I have expertise, and I'm not a large publication. I don't need to be, because I'm sharing certain concepts and my expertise. So if you want to build a niche, then you read up on information and blogs that I put out. So it's very specific. It's no longer about throwing out the buzzwords. It's about specific examples and expertise.
The digital community,
Yes.
in a certain sense,
Yes.
has no hierarchy. So everyone's available to have that channel or to have your particular ideas,
Yes.
each working together. No one is above anyone. Everyone in the
Exactly.
digital context can just, it's the great equalizer.
Right.
Everyone has an opportunity to throw out ideas for others to work with, not just by way of buying your program, but other
Right.
people you might meet with whom you share ideas
collaborate.
and collaborate.
Yeah, it's fantastic. And we didn't have this opportunity before. It was very controlled by mass institution companies and bureaucratic and control of the data and the messages and everything. But like I said, 2020, hopefully we'll be changing the dynamics.
Yeah, I think hierarchical organizations are actually have built-in inefficiencies, right? They
Yes.
benefited in the past from being able to accumulate capital and be able to achieve economies of scale in terms of the labor force that they're working
Right.
with. But I think that a non-hierarchical, a less solid organization can actually achieve efficiencies that a bureaucracy can't do.
Exactly, and we're seeing this with a lot of startups, especially in the tech field. There's brilliant innovation and ideas, from fancy food apps, deliveries, to share riding and hosting platforms.
Yeah.
There's a lot of innovation,
Yeah.
including products that are ethical. So
Okay.
Well, there's a problem with the thing that we build communities that we think are flat, but we build them on the platforms that are actually hierarchical. We use Facebook, we use Google, we use Twitter and all this stuff, and they're owned by corporations. And those corporations, they actually censor whatever messages you're trying to promote, like whatever you want to say. And that's, especially lately, that's clear. That Twitter censors messages. I think it's called ghosting.
yeah,
When you are not banned from the platform, but no one can see your message.
that's true. So we can look at it two ways. They need to control, I guess, information, and we've talked about this before, fake news, bullying, and everything, which is fine. But then freedom of expression is something that, it's a hard balance. But I wouldn't say that they're completely controlling everything, because right now we're having an open discussion and it's our message. So we're always going to be in control of how we communicate, what matters to us,
Right.
and what we put out there.
But there's
Yeah.
always hidden
Yes.
power.
Yeah, hidden power.
Hidden power,
Yeah.
yeah.
I was just going to say that, even somebody like, if YouTube, for example, owned by Google, right?
Yes.
They do own it, right?
They do.
So they can set the rules that they want. I mean, in theory,
Yes, they do.
and
If they don't like what you say, you're not going to be on Google.
right, but they have the freedom. Their freedom of expression, I think, might include allowing whatever they want or don't want on their vehicle.
So this is exactly what I've mentioned previously with community and collaboration. If they want people to put their content up on their platform, they have to allow some sort of creativity, leverage, and innovation. So it works two ways. So they can't say we're controlling everything. They have to obviously be ethical and make sure that what they say, if they're not going to allow certain fake news or hate speech, then we give them permission to do that. But in terms of controlling creativity and innovation, if they try to censor that, then they have no platform, because we are creating the content for them.
But they do have
Right.
power.
Well, they do have power, but this is the argument. What you're saying
Yes.
is that, and Jaron Lanier, if you're familiar with him, I mean, he's been in the internet startup world forever.
Yes.
He's talking about how these big companies now, they they're not allowing. We do create the content on Google, right?
Yes, we
Not
do.
Google, but we're not.
It's
You
a
know, we're not a
platform.
formal stakeholder.
But they can turn off the channel.
They can turn it off. But this is what Jaron Lanier is saying, is that these social networks are really all about exploiting us. Whereas if we were all equal stakeholders in these networks, then we could get the proper rewards that we deserve for creating
Right.
all that content. Now they might make the argument that the advertising revenue that
Well,
they
they
pay
have to
back to content
monetize.
creators
They have
is
to monetize.
part of delivering back to those stakeholders. But
Yes.
there's a lot of stakeholders that are saying that that's not really enough. And when you hear stories about Facebook and designing or gamifying
Yeah.
the whole platform to elicit certain behavior from you, then that's exploitation. That's not necessarily serving
It's hidden.
the content creators.
It's hidden exploitation.
Yeah.
Because there's no, they're saying out front, listen, we've created this thing for this purpose.
Right.
You sort of discover it later because your consciousness is suddenly raised.
Yes.
I want to just point out something interesting, given what Shai's saying about her approach. Reisman, a sociologist writing in the 1950, talked about the lonely crowd. And he pointed out that there was a change from the inner-directed person to the outer-directed person. The inner-directed person is just taking an initiative on their own as a kind of entrepreneur to putting down some new cards. The outer-directed or the other-directed person is the person that fits with corporations. So in America, the idea is I want to be accepted, I want to fit in because corporations need everybody to play along, be good boys and good girls. And what I'm thinking here is there's a movement back to the other directed individual, to the person who's prepared to take the risks in the face of a situation where companies have a lot of control. Like you guys with your channel and with your ideas and the blockchain knowledge, we're in a certain sense taking initiative on our own. But we, at the same time, have to face the nature of the powerful corporation. I asked this friend in Mannheim, he's the Lord Mayor of Mannheim, I've come to know him in some way. I said, how come you handle structures and production in German companies better than in North America? And he said to me something incredible. He says, Jerry, when we're designing something in a car company in Germany or whatever kind of corporate setting, the people on the production line have a piece of that planning. So in a certain sense, you have a big distance between you as individuals who are working creatively and producing product, but you're quite detached from the corporate structure within which is providing the vehicle or channel for you. So you don't really have that German situation where they're listening to you. And that's, I think, as a psychologist, a big concern I have, because we're delivering stuff, we're sharing our secrets without necessarily being aware of it, and these guys are just keeping track, and they're not necessarily listening. The sort of ethics is forced upon them.
Okay.
With reference to the elections. They're not doing it because they're there to make a buck, and they're the big version of you. So you have creative ideas and you're pushing it out there. Well, these guys did it and they benefited from it. So they're very interesting interplay between the kind of personality that's doing your work and Hugh's work and the kind of personality the corporate structure has.
Yeah. So it comes back to being competitive. So even if you're a big corporation, if you want to be competitive, you have to have certain ethics to get customer buy-in and trust for your brand and brand value. So this whole exploitation thing is changing with digital dynamics because you can't take away the community element and the collaboration.
It
and
used to be that
communication.
a company controlled how they were perceived in the public because it was
Yes.
a one-way communication stream
Exactly.
from advertising primarily. Very
Right.
little opportunity for the public or the clients, the customer base to feedback. But
Yes.
now,
You'll have a tweet storm if
Abs-
things get leaked out about you, let's say, hacking someone's private email. Your brand value is going down really fast. So,
Well, it puts it into doubt. And, Bezos's cell phone
yes.
being hacked into and sucking out all kinds of information about him. Then they discovered the Saudis have a piece of that, and then we can say, well, you big powerful guys are being bad boys, but then they say, well, what do we care? We still have the power. So the ethical thing is a very complicated thing, but I agree. The more we expose the king's lacking of clothes, the more that's our way of reacting backward.
Right.
Yeah.
Yes, and I think it's also exciting for everyone to get in and get their voice heard and promote their messages out there. So the control factor is diminishing, I think, my opinion.
and you can help people to do that, right, Shai?
I certainly hope so.
Yeah. Okay, now, despite all these things that we're talking about here, I hear AI is going to change everything and solve all our problems.
Is it solving our problems?
Well, I think a life free of problems is what AI is all about.
So in terms
That's the
of...
illusion that they're all about.
Yes.
That's the hustle that they're selling. Right?
Yes.
They're convincing us.
Well, think about it. If you have free time and everything's automated, you won't have to do mundane jobs, which gives you more time to be creative.
When I was a kid at Michigan, and they say, what are robots going to do for us?
Yeah.
Okay? I look back, it was incredible. It's the 1960s. What are robots going to do for us? They're going to give us more leisure. But who supports Mr. Trump? The people who support Mr. Trump were the lower middle classes that rose up at the Second World War, and now all their companies are being given away to robots. So they're sliding back down economically and in their sense of self as we move to the next generation. So we think it's going to do us a favor.
Yeah.
But what's it really doing
Yeah,
to us?
exactly. And also, I think sometimes that, first of all, I think people need to feel like they're contributing. Like they're doing they need some meaningful work
Yeah.
to do with their lives.
Responsibility. Yeah.
Yeah.
Sorry?
Responsibility.
Yeah,
That's right,
responsibility.
responsibility.
Otherwise, we're a bunch of, if we have no responsibility, we go around and we do
We're
silly
just passive.
things.
Passive.
Yeah.
It's happening to us.
But that's okay, because AI will take care of all the hard stuff, Gerald.
Well, now, I hate to interject, but, you know, they saw it all coming. Okay? They saw it all coming. What do I mean by that? What I mean is, writing in 1935 about television,
Yeah.
Rudolf Arnheim was an important professor in aesthetics from Germany into America, and he says in 1935, television is going to bring the world into your house.
Yeah.
That's fine, but you're going to think that what you see is real. He wrote this in 1935, and you're going to be sucked into, this world is coming in here, and the technology is taking you over. And then after the Second World War, you know, Adorno is talking about mass culture, and there was no internet. And then McLuhan comes along and says, well, the medium is the message, and what happens with new medium? They make it faster, there's bigger scale, and there's and differing pattern. Okay, and there was no, I knew the guy, there was no computer, we didn't imagine it. Okay, so the bottom line is, now we have, what he said is right, space and time collapse. So we're in each other's homes, and your channel goes into people's lives, etc., etc.
Yeah.
But do we take it as real? That's the issue.
Do we?
Well, that's the
And
question.
now we got virtual reality coming in.
That's
By the way,
right.
Theo Adorno wrote all the Beatles songs. You knew that, right?
That would be something. Translated from German, of course.
Well, what is real? That's the question.
That's a
Are
province
we
of
gonna go
you.
there?
But I don't
today?
think we're gonna go
Why
there.
scrape the surface? I mean, you might as well just dive in.
We got 10 minutes.
Guys, come on.
Okay.
Do you want to talk about Nicole?
But mass culture is not different from virtual reality taking us over. And the psychologist, my point is, we see it as real. And when we see it as real, we stop to critically think about it. And part of your work, Shai, is to try to make people aware and make people feel engaged and give people back some agency. That's the battle, right? It's the virtual world taking over us, or us feeling we have agency by having a channel, by having programs like this,
Right.
by dealing critically with blockchain,
Right.
and by waking us people constantly up to remember there's a boundary between you and it. Don't forget that boundary. Don't watch that screen and think it's real and just get sucked into it. So it's an issue of taking initiative or becoming sense, you know.
You know,
tough.
I mean, I think that sounds nice, but is it actually going to happen, Gerald?
Yeah.
Because I sometimes, I guess I'm overall a pessimist about where we're headed with technology.
Yeah, but you
Even
still
with
have
AI.
this channel.
We need to have this conversation now. It's about taking control
That's
and
right.
talking about how we're going to collaborate and,
right.
you know, get in on the game rather than passively just let things go as is. So,
But have people, you know, there's a big concern now for the asocial individual. The kid who's in bed with the cell phone and just there, and
Right.
they're not hanging around with people outside because this is real for that person.
And doesn't it create narcissism?
Well, narcissism is an aspect, but it creates isolation and loneliness. And part of your concern is people working together and taking initiative, building a social community like what we're doing here.
Exactly.
The four of us are talking amongst ourselves.
Yeah.
That's
Right.
social community, as opposed to watching something at a distance and just, you're not really responding to that individual. Or you might be having a conversation, but you're in isolation of your room. You can't touch the world.
and the great thing about this as well is to talk about digital platforms. We can now take our message to a wider audience. So it works both ways.
That's right. That's right. No, it's a very important point because you feel the agency. You know,
Yes.
you're aware that you can do stuff, and you're aware that you can have control. But
Yeah.
it's losing that sense of the boundary around ourselves, and it's an interesting issue because if we look at the old brain, taste, touch, and smell. The new brain, sound and sight, and you're not touching. All you're doing is pushing
Very
buttons.
good point. censor.
I'm gonna have to watch the show again later. Take some notes.
I'm
Gerald.
giving a TEDx
Very
talk
good
on February
point.
1st. It's going to go right into this issue.
Oh yeah?
Yeah.
But the bottom line is that the importance of touch and the importance of the fact that I look this way and I look this way and then I'm looking at you and we're looking at each other, we're
Right.
moving around, and we are together in the space. And together in the space in a situation. You see? Du Bois talked about this whole issue of spectacle, where you think that representation is life. But representation is just sort of pretending you're this or pretending you're that. This is life.
Right.
Right? And your program of trying to reach out to people and have them not just as an income vehicle for you, but establish relationships with you, a relationship
Yes,
of
that's
trust,
right.
fundamental to what you're doing.
Exactly. And growing that way. So, not to be so pessimistic, but we can make
We
it
can
work
help
for
you.
everyone. Yeah.
Just see this
I'm
as
gonna listen to you guys.
AI therapy situation.
Okay. Well, I'm all ears then. So who's got?
I can throw a couple of ideas.
Go.
I thought about marketing and AI and reality and things. Like it's maybe a little bit long, but I'll try to make it short.
Sure.
So you mentioned that the companies should be competitive, like the smaller businesses, and they can.
Yes.
And then what does being competitive means? Then it's probably delivering more value. The more value you deliver, the more competitive you are.
Exactly.
And the
Right.
question, what is value? What do people value? And how we form the values. So like we have Christian values from thousands of years ago, we just absorb it through the society. That's fine. We don't kill, we don't steal. Those are good values. But what do we value right now? How do we create those values? And those are manipulated by what we see, what is good and what's not good.
Above us.
And
That's-
how those values are explained to us, and if we are told, okay, now we have a threat of the like terrorism and this kind of stuff, and they say, okay, we need to surveil everyone in order to prevent, in order to keep you safe. So now we have lower value of privacy, the higher value of surveillance.
Whose security is it? You know, if you're driving down the street in Nanjing, I'm in my student's cousin's car, and listening to this wonderful Chinese music, and it's so beautiful. And then I look up, and there are these three little circles above me just flashing. And suddenly you realize that the Chinese government, no offense meant, but the New Year's coming, is capturing everything. And they took me to Beijing, to the Forbidden City, and they said, bring your passport. I thought I would just show the passport.
Yeah.
They scanned the passport as they went closer and closer to the center. So then they know everything. So then, you know, we don't really think about it, but then you realize somewhere there's a repository. Or my graduate student says, he says, Jerry, all of the text messages we have said, all of our messages that we've sent by email, etc.,
That's right.
they're sitting somewhere. We don't think about it because we just do it in the moment. So our values and our needs are very important, but I would say our need for critical thinking. Years ago, I saw a wonderful frame around a license plate, and it says, Jesus is coming back, and he's pissed and not drunk, because he sees that all the values that he put down as part of a Christian discourse for being kind to other people, the companies and other people have disregarded it. So we cannot run away from power.
So I want to come back to the point, who decides what's valuable?
That's right.
So we have a chance now to communicate what is important to us. So is it recyclable plastics? Is it clean water?
That's right.
So going back to digital being a collaborative effort, we decide that, because if I want to build a brand, I have to deliver what's important to my community.
That's right.
It works two ways.
Yeah, so if I may continue a little bit. So
Sure.
we've seen in the 20th century in Russia and China how the entire population of a country can be influenced by propaganda, and they would change their values.
That's right.
And they would follow completely the opposite values that were in the West, right? So, and then when we had internet, there was kind of a relief. Now we can communicate peer-to-peer with one another, and no one can censor our messages. We don't need to watch TV, whatever we are fed through this
Official message.
global channels. But so what was it, 3 decades later, it turned out that the internet is now centralized. We feel that we can post anything, that we can say anything that we want, and we can post anything that we want, but in fact, all these platforms that we use, they're centralized and they're censored. It's basically Well, and you probably read and heard probably of the election manipulation through
Cambridge
Facebook
Analytica.
and the
WikiLeaks.
Google censoring the results, and China is the best example of
Yeah.
the entire internet is censored.
I arrived
you
in China.
won't find anything.
But your point is exactly correct. It's centralization that's moving faster than we are, and we're not aware of it almost till it's too late.
Well, this is what's happening actually right now. So, in the early 90s, there was the movement. It's called the cypherpunks. So they were promoting cryptography as a tool to preserve privacy. But at that time, the research in cryptography was kind of in the early stages. No one wanted to fund. Well, it's only the governments and the military agencies, and they didn't want to spread this technology. But right now, in 2008, the Bitcoin was created, and Bitcoin was using cryptography. And now, if you do the research and you contribute to the ecosystem, you get paid in cryptocurrency. So all this research is funded by new virtual money that was created.
Counter movement in a sense.
So, and now in recent years, we've seen a lot of research in cryptography and a lot of advancement in cryptography, and we see the emergence of decentralized platforms that like peer-to-peer, almost like BitTorrent, when you can share files and no one can stop it. The first peer-to-peer platform was Napster, but the Napster had a centralized server where people could share music, and it was shut down by the government. And the next iteration was the BitTorrent, and BitTorrent doesn't have a server, so it's impossible to shut down. So the people connect with each other and they share files, usually movies, but doesn't have to be.
So these are almost like revolutionary movements.
Yeah, so this is a peer-to-peer network, and it is impossible to censor. By any, there's no one to censor, and we see right now it's very niche though. So it's not convenient. The Google and Facebooks are very convenient, so they.
Will it become more convenient?
It depends. So the privacy and security is on the opposite side of the scale of convenience. So if you decide to live a convenient life, you forfeit your privacy. So you let Googles and Facebooks to read through you, to collect all the data, and then they feed you the best ad. The problem with that we don't really know how we make decisions, like what's happening in our minds and what's consciousness. So there is a theory by Carl Friston, and so any living system, it doesn't have to be a human, it can be larger than human, any pattern, it can be a city or a company or family. So it tries to preserve itself, and it happened from the emergence of life 4 billion years ago. So any system, in order to survive, it needs to have a model of reality. And the model is never complete because then it's impossible to collect all the information, and reality changes constantly, the world around you. So in order for you to make a decision, you build a model, you make a hypothesis, that's what you need to do. Like you create a model of yourself inside of the model of the world. You try different options and you choose the best, and then you physically exercise this in the world. So, and then you get the feedback.
Right.
If you're right, then your model, the model is hardened.
It's a completely rational model.
Yeah. If you're wrong, you just adjust the model and reiterate, and this goes on and on forever.
Yeah.
So the thinking, the emergence of consciousness, and because the thinking is much less expensive than movements in the physical world, energy-wise.
Okay.
So
You have the German sociologist Hartmut Rosa, R-O-S-A, and he talks about the fact that technology is changing at a super high rate. Like tools did not change for 1 million years, and then technology is now changing, and the social world is now changing. So it's always a step ahead of us, and in a certain sense, we're always trying to catch up. So your ideas are like helping a person catch up and come to terms with themselves.
Yeah.
that's even worse, because the technology is exponential. The evolution is that it takes like 100,000 years. So we are perfectly designed biological machines, but for the caveman age. So we don't know how to behave in huge cities, and how to behave with smartphones.
But now we got transhumanism, so we're going to start to hybridize our biological forms with technological forms.
We are doing this with our smartphones already.
Yeah.
So if this transformation occurs, and this artificial intelligence machine, unbeknownst to us, is keeping track of all the marks that we leave. I got up, I went out the door, I went to the store. I'm not thinking about it. I think I'm just going to get, something to drink. But something is keeping track, and at a certain level, it's developing a model of each of our lives. And the romantic idea is, as a consequence, when I walk into my room, it's going to play the music that I want, because it knows that Jerry needs to relax, or Jerry wants to get more and more intense. So in a certain sense, it's anticipating us. What is the counter to that? And I think the counter to that is to begin to look into the layered nature of ourselves, the history of my life, the history of meanings in our lives. Because one thing about machines, ain't no blood. So they don't have an emotional memory. Now you might suggest, well, the machine is trying something that it doesn't work, so the machine develops a new way of analyzing it and makes progress.
Right.
But it doesn't have an emotional history. It doesn't remember that the second iteration really upset it, and this new iteration is working better. It does not have an emotional bodily history. It does not have an organic history. And I think that the nature of the difference between the organic being, shared, is working together,
Right.
is part of what separates us from machinery. Machinery can have history because it can see the iterations it's gone through. I can have history because of what happened in my family, which would be different from what happened in yours. But it's part of the core of who I am. And I think it's the organic versus the mechanical.
So here's a question, because we are talking about AI, and,
Yep.
and we just heard Dennis talking about, what is consciousness, right? Or, So my question is, and I think this is key, is that because is AI ever going to become self-aware? And and how? How would that happen? And that's really what is consciousness, is what is self-awareness.
Isn't that the Singularity by Ray Kurzweil? Alluding to something like that?
In what sense?
Well, they're not
What's that?
defined, so you need to
AI
define what you want.
merging, we merging
Well,
with
he
AI
takes that to its
and become a
furthest conclusion.
symbiotic.
The whole universe will be one.
So here you need to define what's self-awareness. So how I understand this, if a machine or a robot can create a model of itself inside of the software, test different hypotheses of reality, pick the best one,
Yep.
and then execute this in the real world, it's self-aware.
Is it?
Yeah.
Can that machine go, I am, and operate in its own best interest?
And it's a self-learning system as well.
About
so.
3 years ago, I think in 2015 or something. In 2015 there were like simple robots, and there was an experiment. So they were given, the robots could talk with human, and they were like they had an AI and more or less primitive. So the experiment was, 2 of the robots were given the electronic pill which prevented them from speaking, and one of the robots was given a placebo pill that didn't prevent the robot from speaking, but the robots didn't know what pill they took. So then the researcher asked the robot, what kind of pill did you take? A placebo or the real one? Well, obviously the robot didn't know what it took, so the robot said, I don't know. And then a second later he said, oh, now I know. Since I can't speak, I took a placebo pill. So that's self-awareness.
But that's radical behaviorism. So in the 1960s, you had radical behaviorism. I had a course from one of these guys, and the question is very simple. You ask the robot, do you like pickles? And the robot says to you, well, I must because I had a pickle last week. Same story. So you have historical markers, and the way you know about yourself is I have a historical marker. But I have a challenge for you guys. The challenge for you guys is this. I'd like to imagine a conversation between Sigmund Freud and a robot. In other words, does a robot have an unconscious mind? See? Will the robot make up stories, rationalize?
Maybe that's a better definition for consciousness, that you have a
layer underneath.
unconscious.
And it's the same thing, because I love your point about centralization. That's really what's going on. So these large internet companies and social platforms, they collect all our information, and they decide top down, we're going to permit you to speak, we're not going to permit you to speak, and you're a revolutionary saying, listen guys, we can speak down here, and let's learn how to do it. Okay? But there's no emotion in that discourse, and there is no unconscious. So unconscious means I cannot retrieve an action that I took that has some kind of meaning. I can't find it. And one might take the position that rationally you can do it. But our emotional reactions to events from our childhood, we didn't have the language to describe them. We can have had emotional reactions that become the layers of who we are. That's, I think, our saving grace.
And it's feeling. It's a feeling
That's the point.
sense,
That's right.
I mean, like you're saying, stuff can happen. We don't say anything, we don't act maybe, but we feel it.
That's
and
right.
that informs who we are, who we become.
And it may not become language in operations, because the machines need operations, which can be expressed as language. But I can be in a situation where someone says something hurtful to me. I don't realize the moment, but I feel badly about it afterwards, and I say, I'm feeling badly. What is it? What happened that went down? See, and then the machine, all this, social platforms are very funny. I'm sitting in my kitchen, and I say, to my wife, I said, so-and-so is such an asshole. And my cell phone wakes up and said, that's not nice. It freaked me out, because I was being heard, which means every second we're carrying around our cell phones, we ain't hidden from the world. And then there was an ethical statement there. Well, you shouldn't say that, but the voice just is reacting to the words, doesn't understand why I said that. We can say, well, from the viewpoint of Jesus, we should be nice to each other, but let's say the person was not a nice person. So when ethics, your concern for ethics and ethical companies, almost a paradox, meets reality, our personal history, we spend our lives trying to peel it away. So we're trying to find ourselves. I think that's an aspect of, I love this notion of privacy between people because it's encrypted. So that means we're in an isolated cell amongst ourselves. But I have my emotional history. We all have our emotional histories. Sanity for us, as I tell my students, is being open with yourself about the pain you have felt in your life. A Buddhist would come along and say, and understand that the pain is not even real itself. But my whole point is about we preserve privacy through layering. An organic world is not a mechanical world, even though we could say an electrical world is a kind of mechanical world because it has all these operations. We're challenged, but we're saved at the same time. Our unconscious makes us safe. And I love the idea of having almost a little fantasy story in which Sigmund Freud is encountering computers that are having emotional problems, because of course it's not plausible.
I guess you'll have to write that one, Gerald.
That's fun. But that was fun, don't you think? You can see the cartoon.
It's a great
You can see the cartoon.
Yeah. So what are we going to, we have, not a lot of time left here, so can we come to some sort of conclusion? Shai, I'm not sure how you want to, do you think, what should we figure out whether AI is good or bad, or figure out how to make money off of it somehow, or where do you want to take this conversation?
The way my approach is, it's a tool, and it's up to us to decide how we're going to use these tools, and we get to say the way forward rather than just passively leaving it up to anybody else. And especially if you're in small business, you need to leverage all these tools to grow.
Right. So
collaboration and ethical standards.
Right, and we're still human beings.
We need to have this conversation again.
Well, we're human beings. We're acting in our own best self-interest, and if we've got a small business, then maybe we want to use AI to help us do better in our business and achieve our very human objectives, right?
Sure.
I will finish the dangers of AI and the probable solution for that. So why are we all different? Like all humans different, we have different values, we do different stuff, we make different decisions.
And different histories.
Everything is different with different heights. It's, from evolutionary perspective, everyone has a different set of genes because we don't know how the world's going to change, and if we're all the same, there's a chance that we will put all the eggs in one basket, which is going to wipe the entire humanity. So we are born different, we think differently, we have different looks and all the stuff. So if the half of the population is affected, the other half can survive because they're different. Whether immune system is different, or the thinking process is different, and the entire thing. So but we don't know. Like everything is kind of foggy soup in our heads. With the entire life, we're trying to figure out what's the meaning of life, what's the right thing to do, and no one has ever accomplished this task. So we don't know. But this is how we live. But AI can follow us, take all the points, and AI can understand the model that we have in our heads. And like if the model is wrong, so we face an error, we do a mistake, so we need to fix it. We need to update the model. With AI, the model will never be wrong because AI will always give you the correct result.
The model
to make
is
you
always an
happy.
illusion.
Yeah, the model is illusion because we don't have the
truth.
total information about the world. We just build a model, we believe in it. If we do things within this model and this is correct, so it solidifies. If we encounter an error and we don't like it.
But I like your notion of variation. It's very Darwinian. In other words, we have a million different ways to do it. We've chosen one, but I always think about the person. You know, this guy went to South America and wanted to find out. He worked with a shaman, and you say, and he went to Guyana and said, no, don't talk to us. Go into the forest far to find those guys. And then you wonder about those guys. Someone's walking around in the forest with no education, as we think about it, and somehow they find a plant that'll heal something. This little isolated person with no westernized education. So I like to play with your variation idea, because and there can be an aspect where some person goes out there and it's a found object. So we can have the machine that's getting better and better by thinking about its mistakes. But I think your framework also provides the room for error. And what may seem like an error, because you tried something, suddenly it has a solution, but you didn't know in advance.
Well, that's for humans, but what's the purpose of AI that is serving us? It's to keep you happy and to consume. Well, it depends what's the function of AI, what it's trying to maximize. But usually right now, AIs try to maximize surveillance, sales, warfare, and gambling. So this is like the areas where AIs are developed the most. So probably if you encounter AI on Facebook, it's trying to sell you something that you like. So it will show you something and you like it actually.
So it's a theme of control.
You feel like you need it.
You feel as if you need it. Nice.
Yeah,
nice.
well, because it reinforces your model of the world, and you stay in it and you don't change. And eventually, if this is going on, so AI will standardize all human beings into one model, and we will follow it. And this is dangerous because we are not going to survive in case of the catastrophe that we cannot withstand with our model.
I think in terms of romance,
actually,
we can imagine she loves us, or the person loves you.
This is really just the beginning of a conversation that needs to continue to go on.
Yeah.
Otherwise,
right.
we're going to end up with a standardized gene pool
And four people who are the same having a conversation.
and artificial intimacy and
Illusion.
AI will do all our buying for us. So, so thanks you guys for coming here today. Shai,
Thank
do you
you
want
for
to
having
just
us.
do you guys want to give out some contact information? I know Shai.
Yes.
People might want to get the.
Sure, you
the
can
marketing
find
ad.
me on Google at Shai Az Digital. My website is strategy3inspired.com.
Okay. And Dennis?
well, you can Google That Crypto. It's like that channel. We used to have a show for a couple of years here
All about crypto? Yeah.
about cryptocurrency and blockchain.
Yeah.
It's called That Crypto.
Okay, great. Dennis? Sorry,
Gerald.
Gerald.
All you gotta do is look at Cupchik, Cupchik, not CK, it's not Cupchicken. And now they have my 9 lectures on YouTube and other interviews with artists. And if you want to contact me, you'll find access there just for the university.
Plus you're doing a TEDx, so
At
people can
TEDx
look at
February
the TEDx
1st.
talk.
God help
And
me.
what's the subject? They can type that into.
The medium is the matrix.
Okay. I hear a McLuhan riff there
Yeah.
going on. Okay, thank you.
Pleasure.
Thank
Thanks,
Thank
guys. That was
you.
lots
Shai,
of fun.
thanks, Dennis.
Thank you.
We'll see you all next time here at Liquid Lunch. ThatChannel.com.